Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Yevamos, Parak Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishna Gimel, Mishna 3. Now, there is a lot of information that we need in order to be able to understand this Mishnah. It's not about, we don't need any charts or anything like that, but it's just a lot of information. All right, so I'm going to begin with the introduction that they have here. In a case of an ordinary marriage, a man generally has no rights to his wife's property during the period between Kedushin and the Suin. We know that in a regular marriage, you do Kedushin, the betrothal, you give her a ring. In the times of the Mishnah, between the Kedushin and the Chuppah could be a lengthy time. There could be around a year in between. And now what happens to, excuse me, now the question is, what happens, a wife has property, right? She has property, and she gets the property. Let's say she inherits the property during the period between the Kedushin and the Nisuin and the Chuppah. So generally, a man has no rights to that. Doesn't have rights to that property. It's her property. She has it before the actual marriage, and therefore he doesn't necessarily have any rights to it. However, there's a Mishnah in Ksubis, chapter Ksubis, that records a dispute regarding a woman who inherits property during that period. Okay? Again, the introduction starts off with saying that the property that she has during that she brought in, that she has already from, let's say, before she was betrothed, she has it after she's betrothed, that is not something the husband has rights to. However, let's say she inherits it during that time. She first gets it during that period of time between the Kedushin and the Chuppah. So Beis Shammai say that she is allowed to sell it since it's completely hers. Just because she's betrothed to the person doesn't give him any rights in it yet. Whereas Beis Hillel say that she could not sell it since the husband expects to get rights to it after Nisuin. Meaning, basically, what it brings into the marriage before the Nisuin, he doesn't have any rights to. No rights. She can do what she wants with it. What she inherits during that period of time between Kedushin and Nisuin, Beis Hillel say, she can't sell it. Because since after the Nisuin, he does get rights to it, therefore Beis Hillel say, since he expects to get the rights to it after the Chuppah, in between the Kedushin and the Chuppah, she also can't sell it. Now, our Mishnah is going to now be up the following case. Our Mishnah is not between Kedushin and Nisuin, but our Mishnah is going to be talking about a woman after her husband has died. She's now bound for Yibam to her brother-in-law, but he didn't do Yibam yet. And that is when she inherits the property. So let's read the Mishnah now. Shomeres Yavam, Shenaflu Nechasim. This phrase, Shomeres Yavim, we may have had it before, but it literally means a woman awaiting Yibam. She's awaiting Yavim. She's awaiting Yibam. Her husband died without children, and now she's awaiting Yibam, or Chalitza, but she's awaiting Yibam from the brother-in-law. Shenaflu Nechasim. That property fell to her during that period of time. She inherited something during that period of time. Maidim Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree. Shemay Cheres v'Naisenes v'Kayim. She can sell, she can gift it, and the transaction stand. Meaning, even though we just mentioned an argument between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, if she inherits something between Kedushin and the Chuppah, when we're talking about a woman who is awaiting Yibam, nobody says there that the brother-in-law has any rights to stop her from selling it. And that's because even though there is a connection for Yibam between the woman and her brother-in-law, that's not as strong as a connection as Kedushin is. Kedushin is a real marriage. For instance, if a woman has Kedushin done to her and she habits with another man, death penalty for doing so. That's 100% adultery. Okay? If another man cohabits with this woman awaiting Yibam, not her brother-in-law, some other man, it's a prohibition. It gets the punishment of lashes. But it's not as severe because it's not as strong a connection. Therefore, both Beis Shammai, everybody agrees that when she inherits property during that period of time that she's awaiting Yibam, that she has full rights to it. She can do anything she wants with the property, and it stands. Okay, now, Let's continue. Again, before we continue the next part of the Mishnah, a little introduction. When a couple marries, the husband gives his wife a document called a ksuba, which details all of his obligations to her, including the amount he will pay her should he divorce her or die before her. This includes a standard payment of either 100 or 200 zuz, a certain amount of money, plus any additional amount he commits to her. You could add on if you want to. It also includes, this is very important, it also includes the value of the property she brings into the marriage, where the husband guarantees to pay her the original value of his property in case he dies before her or divorces her. This property is called Nechsei Tzoyin Barzel property. Let me explain what's going on here. So you have properties that she brings into the marriage after the chuppah, right? These are properties she has. She marries the guy. These properties come into the marriage. Now, they were hers. The thing is, though, that what happens after the marriage is two possibilities with this property. One possibility is that he takes responsibility for them. That means right now they came in at a certain value. And he accepts upon himself that were he to die before she does, or to divorce her, he will return her the value of those properties as they were when they came into the marriage. That's the deal. Okay? Meaning he goes ahead and he's gonna I'm assuming he's gonna use these properties, but he's responsible to return to her the value of these properties as they were when they got married in case he dies or he divorces her. That's called Nechsei Tzoyin Barzel. That's called, literally translated, iron sheep properties. Why they're called iron sheep exactly, I'm not sure. But the iron part is the fact that it's set, right? The value is set. This is what he has to return. If by the time he divorces her, it went up in property, it's his gain. If they went down by the time he divorces her, then he's got to he's got to pay her according to the original price. So sometimes he gains, sometimes he loses. So that's one thing. That's called Nechsei Tzoyin Barzel. Then there's something called Nechsei Malug, where the deal is different. The deal is that the property she brings into the marriage is going to be her property. However, he owns it for its usage. He uses it. He could rent it. He could work it. And any profits of it go to him. If he divorces her, then the property just goes back to her as is. He's not responsible for any value that it was. If it went down in value, that makes no difference. The deal here is this property belongs to her. If he divorces her or dies, it completely goes back to her. It's completely hers. Just during their marriage, he has the usage and the profits of the property. These are the two possibilities of what to do with the properties of the woman when they come into a marriage. Now, the question here is, what happens in this case? We're talking about she was waiting for Yibum. She's waiting for Yibum. And the commentaries explain that our next discussion in the Mishnah is talking about that she wasn't only waiting for Yibum, but he already did Mimer on her. Remember Mimer? The Kedushin that the rabbis instituted, or a Kedushin that's done on a Yevama before you do Yibum. Right? You do the same way you betroth a regular woman, you do the same thing to a Yevama. You give her a ring. Okay? That's called Mimer. So our case is that the first brother died, the wife was waiting for Yibum from the brother, and the brother did Mimer on her. He didn't do the full Yibum yet. If he did a full Yibum, it's his wife 100%. And in a situation where, let's say in all these cases, the wife dies before he does. So what happens to the ksuba money? What happens to everything that they made up? The answer is he inherits it. It's all his. He doesn't have to pay her children any ksuba money, any of the properties. Now he takes over 100%, no matter how they made it up to begin with, and he inherits her. And it would seem like if there's no mimer, there would be no mimer, then it would seem that in that case, I'm assuming, if there was no mimer, the halacha would be that her heirs are going to get everything. Her heirs are going to get it. Because there's no husband there, so then it's her heirs. But here the situation is where mimer was done. Okay, so Mimer was done to the woman, and then she died. So the Mishnah reads, Mesa, she died. Mayasu b'ksubasa. What do they do with her ksuba? That refers to the 100 or 200 zuz payment. And with the properties that come in and go out with her. Meaning all the things we spoke about, the 200 zuz, additional money, the properties that were tzayin barzel, that he took upon himself to pay their value. But now she died. Or let's say the ones that go in and go out with her, the nechsei malug. She brings them in, she takes them out. What happens with them? Basically, is this guy who did mimer, right? Do we look at him as her husband, and therefore he's going to inherit? Or do we not? So the Mishnah says like this, Beis Shammai oimrim, Beis Shammai say, Yachloiku yarshei habal im yarshei ha'av. The inheritors, the heirs of the husband, right? Meaning his other brothers, okay? Or, right? Yarshei habal refers to the heirs of the first husband. Meaning, well, the brother who was supposed to do Yibam, does he, he is going to divide, he's going to split up the property in Yarashav with the heirs of the father. The heirs of the father means her heirs. She dies, she has no children, right? So who is her next in line to inherit her? Her father. If there's no father, her brothers. Okay, so Beis Shammai say that they split it. Basically the brother of the dead husband, together with her heirs, they're going to split. Now, it's important to know that right now, Beis Shammai is only addressing the nichsei malug, the properties that go in and go out. That is what Beis Shammai is addressing. Those properties that we say, during the marriage, he uses it. He has the profits. If he were to die first, she gets it all back. Now, when she died, who gets those properties? So Beis Shammai say those properties are split between the brother, who is the heir of the first husband, and her heirs. It's split. Why is it split? So the explanation is, according to Beis Shammai, don't forget, we're talking about here, he did mimer. The brother who was waiting for Yibam, he did mimer. He did the Yibam for Kedushin, the Kedushin for Yibam. Okay, he did it. And Beis Shammai have a suffix, they have a doubt. What status does mimer do? Does mimer make him her husband? And therefore, by doing so, he is the sole heir? Or do we say no? Mimer doesn't do anything. It's a little connection, but nothing that makes the brother-in-law before Yibam her husband. And therefore, where did all those properties go? To her heirs. But since Beis Shammai has a doubt, Beis Shammai say, you got a doubt? Split it. He has a doubt. He has a halacha question. Apparently he has no way of determining what the status is, and therefore they got to split it. That's Beis Shammai's opinion. Beis Hillel say, now to understand Beis Hillel is going to address all the issues involved here. All the questions. The ksuba money, the tzayin barzel, the nichsei malug, all the properties, Beis Hillel is going to address it. But it's not going to be so simple to understand. Beis Hillel say, nechasim echezkasim. All the properties remain in their original status. That means where we see them before, that's where they remain. So now let's go through each one and try to understand that. Nechasim b'chezkasan. The properties remain under their previous status. The properties we refer to here are what we called before the nichsei tzayin barzel. The properties that she brought into the marriage, that he took upon himself to give her back their value as they were when they came into the marriage in case he dies or divorces her. Those properties, okay, remain in their original status. Meaning, those properties, how do we actually view them? Whose chazakah were they in? What was their previous status? Who do we see as the owner of them from before? Now, we have to understand that these properties that we're talking about right now were properties she brought into the first marriage, which maybe I didn't clarify. I should have clarified that. Our discussion now is not about something that came to her we're not talking about the properties that came to her while she's waiting for Yibam. These are properties she brought into the first marriage. And all these obligations were the obligations of the first husband to her. And the first husband died. but she can't collect anything from them because there's a possibility of Yibum. And if Yibum takes place, guess who gets it all? The brother who did Yibum. Then it becomes a whole different ball. Then it's a different ball game. Now it's his. But here the point is that he didn't do Yibum. So essentially, all these obligations of the ksuba that we're talking about are all from the first husband. Okay, so these, what we call the nechsei tzayin barzel, the properties that he took upon himself to pay her their value if he divorces her. Who took upon himself that responsibility? The first husband, right? It was what she brought into the first marriage, and the first husband took responsibility for them. So Beis Hillel say, okay, those properties, they stay in their original status. What was their original status? What was their status beforehand? Were they her properties because she owned them? Or do we see them as his properties because he's responsible for them? And therefore, actually, when Beis Hillel is saying the chasim mechazkas and the properties remain in their original status, we're not sure what the original status are. And therefore, those properties themselves, even according to Beis Hillel, are divided. Next, ksuba bechazkas yarshei abal. The ksuba money remains in the status of the heirs of the husband. Now, ksuba money means money that he has to shell out to her. So where was that money until now? By the first husband. And even after the first husband dies, essentially, his brothers inherit him. And therefore, the money is going to stay by them unless, there would be something to say that they have to pay it. So that money was by the original husband. And now after he died, it was by his brothers. And then when she died, okay, what was its status before she died? It was by the husband's. It was in the husband's estate. So that money stays right where it is. It doesn't go to her heirs. Now, the final part. The properties that go in and go out with her, meaning the nichsei maluk, the properties that she remains the owner of, just that the husband uses. And if he were to die to divorce her, she just takes them back. Okay. So now, those properties, okay, in whose properties and whose possession were those properties? Hers. Because they always were hers. He just had the usage of it, but they always were. It was her property. We say the guf, the actual body of the property, belongs to her. He can use it, and she can't do anything to stop that, but it's actually hers. And then the question is, who is going to be the one that when she dies to inherit it? If she had a husband, he would get it. But says Beis Hillel, the mimer that he did, the Yavem, the brother-in-law waiting for Yibam, the mimer that he did, according to Torah law, is nothing. It's only a rabbinic thing. It's only rabbinic. According to Torah law, it does nothing. And therefore, if it does nothing, then that means that those properties were never under the possession of the brother she was waiting for Yibam for. They're always in hers. And therefore, when she dies, it's her heirs that now get those properties. Okay, so it wasn't as complicated as a chart, but just a lot of information.
I got a question.
Okay, we'll deal with it. Next, let's quickly do some of the Chofetz Chaim here. Okay. Then the Chofetz Chaim just said that if a person, the difference between hearing Lashon Hara and believing Lashon Hara is if the Lashon Hara is relevant to you, you're allowed to listen to it. You can never believe it as a fact, but you can listen to it. So the Chofetz Chaim says, Vayila pele b'nei ha'kairei, im keinei nucha lotzeis b'dei shemayim. Basically, the question is, all right, you told me that I can listen to the Lashon Hara if it's relevant to me. And how am I supposed to figure that out? How am I supposed to figure that out? If I go in and start listening, that means, and it comes out that it wasn't relevant to me, that means I listened to Lashon Hara. So what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to, what's the plan? What am I supposed to do to figure out if I can listen or not? Says the Chofetz Chaim Tshuva L'Davar. Here's the answer. If you want to fulfill your obligations to God regarding hearing Lashon Hara or not, this is what you do. Somebody comes over to you and you see he has some information for you. Okay? Well, maybe she writes and you get the sense that what he's going to say is not positive. You say to the person, look, before you start, or before you continue, tell me, is this relevant to me? Do I need it for someone to protect myself, or in order to help somebody else, or to correct the person who did something wrong? Is this something that fits under that? So then he says to him, if he tells him that, yeah, it's relevant to you, okay, then you listen. Don't believe it, just take it into consideration. But if you understand from his answer that, well, is it relevant to you? It could be, maybe, you kind of get the sense that he's really just coming to tell you some juicy piece of gossip, or it's something that's not necessarily relevant to you. That's when you tell him, sorry, no more, because it could be Lashon Hara. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.